Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Whit Moses. I'm on the product marketing team here at Tonic. I focus on bringing new capabilities to market for Tonic Textual, which is our tool for preparing unstructured data and text for AI and ML model training and development, especially data sets that contain sensitive content or language. I'm also joined by our CTO and co-founder, Adam. Uh, I just gave a quick intro, so I'll pass it to Adam before we dive into a brief overview of the textual product, a conversation around why we built custom entity types, which is our new solution for building your own entity recognition models. And then we'll dig into a demo of the new capability before we wrap with a Q&A. So Adam, take it away.
Excellent. So, as Wood said, my name's Adam. This is funny. This is a typo. I'm not the CTO. I'm our head of engineering. My co-founder Andrew is the CTO, but I'll happily take CTO for a day.
Oh,
I'll
goodness.
enjoy that. Should we get started with maybe? Would you like me to give the overview of Tonic Textual, or were you planning on giving that today?
I'm happy to do it. So why don't I just jump in, and if there's anything you want
Great.
to add on top of what I say,
Perfect.
we can make this more of a dialogue. And as I mentioned before, we do want this session to be interactive. I've got the Zoom chat open, so in real time, drop questions into the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can, either as it pertains to the content in real time or at the end during the Q&A. So, like I said, let's jump into an overview of Tonic Textual. Um, Tonic Textual has become really the foundation for how teams safely prepare sensitive, unstructured data like clinical notes, contracts, customer service chats, uh, really any form of unstructured text to be used downstream for AI and ML model training and development. So everything we're going to show today builds directly on the textual platform. And I do want to call out that Tonic Textual is available to anyone uh, with a free trial. So I'll go ahead and drop a link to our product page where you can sign up. If the content that we go through today feels relevant, then I highly recommend starting a free trial and also scheduling a demo with the team to explore your specific use case. So dropping the link there in chat. Um, so at its core, Textual is a de-identification and data preparation platform designed specifically for unstructured, high-value text. Teams use Textual to detect sensitive entities in free text using our proprietary named entity recognition or NER models, and then also to protect that information, either by redacting it or replacing it with high-fidelity synthetic values. For example, if you're de-identifying a customer service transcript for a bank, we replace some of the PII, like the customer name, account number, and other values with synthetic alternatives. So all of that is to say that John could become Pete, and account A437 may become account G652, and so on, so that you still have high quality data sets that are true to life that can be used for model training downstream. We take these de-identified outputs and also make them shareable as standardized formats for downstream systems, like RAG systems, training pipelines. Typically, this is in the form of JSON code or a synthetic copy of the original document. So that is to say, if you put in a Word document or a PDF, we'll output a de-identified Word doc or PDF. And really what makes textual unique and valuable is the combination of accuracy, flexibility, and control. Everything, you have the option to have everything happen within your own environment or in our secure cloud, and you retain full control of both your data and now your models, which we'll discuss more in a bit. Adam, anything to add?
No, that was. I mean, that was great. Um, that was really good. Let's continue.
Cool. And just to give a slightly double click, one of our on our synthetic approach to de-identification. One of the most important capabilities in textual is how we protect sensitive information without degrading data quality. So you have fine-grained control over how each entity type is handled. If you want full redaction, you can apply it. Think, a black box or really a identifying code, a scrambled code that will replace that PII. But if you want a more natural, hidden in plain sight approach, you can synthesize realistic replacements. And for customers with compliance requirements, specifically HIPAA, we work really closely with expert determination partners to help you achieve a certified level of compliance in a seamless way. So this combination of entity level flexibility and automated transformations makes it really seamless and takes a lot of the time and friction to safely unlock data sets that previously felt too sensitive to use. And I am keeping my eye on the chat, so if anybody has questions, feel free to jump in. But let's jump into why we built our latest capability, custom entity types. So custom entity types gives your team a self-serve workflow to define, refine, train, and deploy your own entity models right inside Tonic Textual. This can be done without any ML expertise. So how it works, um, you start by refining detection for entities that matter to your org. You can train the models on your own data in your own environment or secure cloud. And the entire workflow is pretty intuitive. We'll give you a shot of what the UI looks on the next slide. But in terms of why we built this, even the best off-the-shelf NER models struggle with domain-specific language. So legal teams have unique clauses and identifiers. Healthcare teams often rely on clinical shorthand or prescription names that are not going to be automatically picked up by an off-the-shelf detection system. Likewise, financial institutions and often use terminology that isn't standard in taxonomies. So beyond that, many organizations need custom entity types that simply don't exist out of the box. And even when models perform well on benchmarks, they often need a level of refinement to align with a team's internal quality bar. So finally, when language evolves, it's worth calling out that products change, workflows change, entities change, and that's why we built custom entity types, because teams need a way to keep their detection models accurate and up to date without bringing in a data science team every time. So ultimately, this is all about putting domain expertise into the hands of our users. I walked through a little bit of the workflow. Previously, we've got kind of a preview of the UX on the right-hand side, where we actually built custom entities based upon names of different bird species. But we'll actually jump into probably what aligns a little bit closer with your use case in the demo. But anything to add here, Adam, or are you ready to jump into the
No,
demo?
let's give a live demo. I think it'll drive home a lot of what we're saying. So I can take over the screen share if that's okay with you.
That would be great.
Alrighty, let me share my screen and we're gonna go into a live product demo. As soon as I figure out how to use Zoom, there we go. I think I got it. Wait, can you see my Chrome browser with textual up?
Now I do, yes.
Wonderful. Okay. So folks, I'm going to give a demo of our new custom entities feature. This is the feature that allows you to train your own entity detection models. Essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to provide this experience a small amount of our own data. Then Textual is going to take that data, it's going to annotate it. It is going to then use those annotations to train a small BERT model, which you can use for like really fast and accurate detection of text in your own models. So why are you using a BERT model and not a large language model? In general, the customers that use Tonic Textual have billions or trillions of words that they're trying to process, and they need it to work really fast. BERT models are small, lightweight models, really well suited to different types of NLP tasks like named entity recognition. You can run them on CPU machines, or you can run them on GPUs and get really, really fast throughput. So for example, one of our BERT models can handle probably on the order of 20 or 30,000 words per second of throughput, running on a very small, modest, cheap GPU in any cloud or data center. So, you get really kind of like extreme scale using these small, efficient models. And those are the models that we build in custom entities. Now, the Tonic Textual experience itself, ships with support for maybe 30 or 40 built-in entity types. right? But sometimes customers have very industry specific terminology or just organization specific types of entities that our models, obviously couldn't be familiar with them because they're proprietary. Like, our models find things like names, emails, social security numbers, addresses, phone numbers, things of that nature. But, let's say, for example, that you're a healthcare company trying to train NER models for a data or for a clinical data extraction task. Maybe you want to identify in a series of millions or billions of clinical notes all of the biomarkers found. We don't have a biomarker entity, but you can train one in this new experience and then run it over your data. That's what we do, right? So for today, I've already gone ahead and trained my own custom entity. I'm going to go over the results of it in a little while, and I'll click into this quickly. You can see it here. What I'm going to do, though, is actually recreate that experience of how I built that model, and I'm going to do it live for everyone here. So to get started, here I am in Tonic Textual. Everyone's welcome to go create their own account, try it for themselves. Textual.tonic.ai. Go create an account. You get 100,000 words for free. Beyond that, you can swipe your credit card and then, kind of consume in a pay-as-you-go fashion. And if you have higher volumes and you're looking for discounts, then reach out and then we can sign you up for annual commits at, very steep cost per word discounts. So just let us know. All right. So I'm in Textual. I'm on the custom entities page right here. Let's create a new custom entity type. We're going to build a model-based entity. That means we're training a model to identify entities as opposed to using our regex-based entity type. So I got to give it a name. We're going to call it flight number, very similar to the other model I just trained. And I got to give a description of what we're looking for. Okay, so I already have a description ready to go. I'd like to identify flight numbers in a series of airline customer support transcripts. The flight number should include the number itself and any prefix which indicates the airline. So I'm essentially describing what I'm looking for. In this case, I have a bunch of transcripts from airline customer support calls, right? I mean, obviously they aren't real transcripts. We just generated them with Gemini. But I have a bunch of transcripts and I want to train a model to find flight numbers, okay? And I kind of described the task here. Great. Now I need to upload some data so I can kind of iterate on my annotation guidelines to make sure that I'm able to kind of annotate this data accurately. Let's upload a handful of files. We'll upload all of these. Actually, we'll do all but that one. All right, so now our models are going to annotate these documents. We're going to review the annotations to make sure we're happy with them. And if we are, we're going to upload a large amount of transcripts so that we can generate a sufficient amount of training data. If we're not happy with the annotations, then we can go through an iterative process to improve our guidelines until we like the annotations. And then we begin the model training step. So right now, we're annotating. I'll click on one of the transcripts that's ready for review. And you can see it's actually working quite well out of the box. Like, there's these flights, UA 456. I'm not seeing any other flights that we're missing. This looks good. And in fact, all of these transcripts are good. We do a very good job at finding all of our flight numbers. So let's mark all of these as reviewed, and I'm happy with them. We'll let it finish these annotations as well. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually upload an additional document that needs to get annotated. I want to try something where the text is a little messier. So that looks good. Let me just review all of these. That looks good. That looks good. All right, let's add another example. I don't need to upload the file. I can just paste in what I'm looking for. Let me do that, and then we can kind of view what I did. So here's an example, which is a little messier. So we'll let this annotate quickly. And then here, our annotation model isn't going to work as well. The data is messier. So we're going to kind of make some corrections so that the model does a better job. So you can see, for example, it flags the flight number here, but it doesn't flag it here. Here, like the customer support agent saying, can I have your flight number? The user says MC705. We didn't flag that. So I'm going to flag it myself. Oops. Great. Then the agent says, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Was that an M or N you said? Well, M or N actually is sensitive, right? It's one of the letters in the flight. You need to redact that. And then finally, the user confirms, oh, it was M as in man. So we're going to flag that as well. Okay. So actually, the annotation model did a good job, But as soon as like the text and the conversation gets more complex and perhaps even more realistic, especially if you have like a spotty phone connection, it starts to miss things. So we're going to correct those annotations. All right, all my files are reviewed. Let's go to the guidelines now. So you can see we did perfect on all of the files besides the one I uploaded, right? Like we found everything. My F1 score in this column, it was solid. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to update our guidelines. And you know what I'm going to do? In fact, I've already gone through this process in the other model. Let me show you what it give me one moment. You know what I want to do real quick? Let me grab something from over here. I'm going to go to the model that I already trained. And it occurs to me I forgot to do something. I just want to grab that. I'm gonna use that in a little bit. All right. Pretend you didn't see that. We'll go back here. So let's actually now look at let's try a new set of guidelines to see if we can improve our recall score, our F1 score, on that more complex document without hurting the scores on our other documents. So I'm going to edit the guidelines. I'm going to try this guy, which is a slightly more improved version of my initial set of guidelines. Excellent. So you can see now my guidelines now are a little more specific. Like I say, make sure to label questions, partial statements, or phonetic spellings, right? Like I'm telling it, hey, there's certain things that you missed before. Make sure you get it this time. And you can see we're already starting to do a little better. And in fact, for the next revision, I'm going to have the LLM suggest its own guidelines. The LLM looks at what it's missing. It knows the ground truth because we annotated. It knows what the current set of guidelines are. It can actually generate its own suggestions as to how to annotate. So we can take a look at that and see how we do. Oh, sorry, I must have lost connection for a second. All right, we can go back here. We're going to go to this guy. Guideline refinement. All right, it's almost done. Sorry about that. All right, now we'll let the new guidelines generate. But you can see that, our scores bumped a little bit, but not as much as I wanted them to. So instead of waiting for these, for it to suggest its own guidelines, let me go to the model that I already trained. This one, I used the same data. I used the same tougher example. Everything's identical. The initial starting point was the same. And I went through multiple versions, 4 versions of the guidelines. In version 2, I provided my own. In version 3, I let the large language model make adjustments to it. And you can see it started doing better, right? The recall score went from 0.5 to 0.75. That's good. In the next version of the guidelines, it got even more specific about, what to avoid and what not to avoid. And you can see now, actually, the F1 scores on our harder test case were perfect as well. So finally, after 4 revisions, and most of which the whole process really was automated, we now have a good mechanism for annotating data like this. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to upload a lot of transcripts. Here I'm going to upload 100 transcripts, 100 more transcripts. We already know how to annotate documents like this. I don't need to do anything. I'm just going to upload the transcripts, and I am going to begin a model training. For this model now, we can actually start inferencing on the model. And let me show you what that looks like. So here is an example. I go to our system and I say, hey, here's a sentence I want you to redact. I'm traveling from Atlanta today on flight DL245, right? I live in Atlanta, so everything's Delta, right? So I tell it that I'm going to use my custom entity, custom flight number. And you can see what we're able to do. The model is now able to identify flight DL245 as a flight number. So now as soon as my model is trained, the whole process takes maybe 25 minutes end to end. I can go and begin identifying text and redacting text that includes this new custom entity. Okay, so that's the demo for today. You can train as many custom entities as you like. You can make them as specific as you like. You can use English or non-English. It doesn't matter. As long as you're able to come up with a good set of annotation guidelines to annotate those first few documents, and you're confident those guidelines will work on the larger collection of data that you have, you're going to be able to train your own NER model for identification, data extraction, and synthesis. All right. I think we can end. We can stop the demo there. And of course, if there's questions, I'd be happy to answer those now.
That sounds great. So feel free to drop any questions that you have directly into the chat.
There's
And
also the Q&A feature that you can use as well, that only Wit and I can see, but we can answer questions there. And I think there already are some questions coming in through the Q&A. Great. Wait, let me pull up some of the questions that are in the Q&A. Or do you want to read some of them off?
why don't you go for it? Because I actually am having a hard time finding the Q&A.
Got it. Okay. So someone's asking, like how much data do we need in order to start training these custom entity models? What's the minimum amount of data? So there is no like official minimum amount of data that you need to actually train one of these models. In general, like, to a point, the more you have, the better the experience will be. Like on the model that I just trained, the F1 score of that first model version wasn't as high as what the F1 score was on all that sample data. And that's because I only trained on 108 transcripts. I'd say if you were to like, for this type of entity, if you were to maybe come in with like 500 to 1,000 transcripts, you would start seeing like really, really strong F1 scores, like in the, 0.9 and above. So, it depends on a lot of factors. The more you have, the better. Of course, past a certain point, you don't need to provide more data. Like it's not going to help. But like I would say, if you can provide maybe like at least 1,000 examples of the entity you're looking for, you'll probably be in a good spot. And that's never a guarantee, but I think it's a good rule of thumb.
I found the Q&A. I see another one, Adam.
Right.
How long does model training typically take? I know you said about 25 minutes end to end during the demo. Is
So
that
for this demo, it was 25 minutes. And again, actually, it was honestly probably closer to like 20. And that's again a function of how much data I was using for the actual model training step. The model training step has two parts, right? First, you got to actually annotate all the text. That takes maybe 15, 20 seconds per file. The next step is then it actually has to go, train the model, build the model weights, export them, ship them, all these different things. And that also will typically be a function of the amount of training data. I trained a model the other day. It had probably 7x the data that I used in this demo. It took about an hour end to end. So I think like typically for like real world data sizes, it's in the probably hour range in order to get like a pretty strong model out the other end. And again, everyone remember, like, you think about like fine tuning and model training, you're like, oh my God, it can take, days or weeks on very expensive GPUs. Remember, we're not fine tuning or building large language models here. We're training fast, efficient BERT models. So everything's, relatively is fast and cheap.
cool? It looks like we had a question come in through the Q&A. Can this work for structured data as well?
Interesting. No, so if you have structured data, then we have an entirely different offering called Tonic Structural. Tonic Structural has its own mechanisms for identifying sensitive information in structured data, and then its own mechanisms for how to deal with it. So if you go to if you just go to Tonic AI, our website, you'll see a lot of information on Tonic Structural. That's actually the company. Our Tonic is, I think, approaching 8 years old. Tonic Structural was our first and remains our kind of flagship product for structured data. So definitely go to Tonic AI, check it out, and you'll see all of the cool things we do with structured data, which is a lot.
Great, thanks. Is there a way to version control different iterations of the model, Adam?
Yes. So everything is version controlled. The guideline refinement you do, the models that you generate. I could go, for example, I didn't show this part, but when I built the actual model, prior to getting on the demo today, you basically, when you create the model, you select the collection of files you want to train on, and you select which version of the annotation guidelines to use. Right now, I could do that. I could look at the model. I could see my F1 scores. I could be like, this version of the model is not great. Let's actually add more data. And that would be my V2 of the model. Or let's go adjust the annotation guidelines one more time. Train again. That would be my V3. And you essentially, for a given custom entity, that you train, you would essentially activate just one version of your model at a time. And every change you make gets its own version number. So you can kind of go forwards and backwards in time as needed.
Awesome. It looks like we're getting close to time. So if anybody has any other questions, please go ahead and drop them into the chat. But before we drop, curious, Adam, if you can just paint the picture a little bit, how do these custom entity models work alongside kind of that out of the box detection that you're going to get on day one with textual?
Right. Think of it purely as augmenting existing capabilities. So, we have a set of pre-built models for, identifying very common entity types like, name, email, phone, SSN, address, the things that people typically associate with PII or PHI, right? Custom entities work on top of that. So in addition to identifying all of the built-in entity types that we already do, you can also train your own specific models that kind of augment, you know, current results.
Makes sense. Well, we are right at the bottom of the hour. Thank you everybody for joining today. If there were any questions that well, actually, I see
Oh,
one that
I'll answer this because Michael has been was an early textual user. Hi, Michael. Good to see you. Um, we we could potentially so we host some of our other products in the EU, or rather we have hosted versions both in the EU and in the US. We haven't yet done that with textual. Michael, you should shoot me an email and we can talk. It's not something I'm necessarily opposed to. It's just not something that we haven't had a lot of need for it yet. Typically, most of our EU customers are self-hosting, meaning they actually take our solution and deploy it in their own VPCs or in their own data centers. So we haven't had the need to have an EU cloud yet. So we can talk about that if you want to shoot me an email.
thanks,
Uh,
Michael.
yeah,
Definitely sounds like
and
a sick.
John is asking about if there's webinars for Tonic Structural. John, we have webinars for Tonic Structural and for Tonic Fabricate, our other structured data offering, quite frequently. If you want to shoot us an email at hello@tonic.ai, which is the email address on the screen right now, I can connect you with someone that can send you a bunch of information about our Tonic Structured and Tonic Fabricate offerings.
Yeah, that sounds great. And if any other questions come to mind, this email address, hello@tonic.ai, will go straight to the team. And then I've also included the link to the textual product page below. This, again, will give you a deeper dive into everything that's in Tonic Textual, as well as point you to where you can sign up for a free trial or request a conversation with somebody on the team to dig into your specific use case. But at any rate, it's been a pleasure chatting with everyone. Hope you're staying warm or cool, depending on where you are in the world, and hope to hear from you soon. And if you need to revisit any of this content, we will be hosting a recording of everything that we spoke about today on the webinar section of our resources page, which should be up in about a day. Thanks,
Wonderful. Thanks a
everybody.
lot, Whit. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.